format of this meeting is that on alternate weeks there is a step reading or a step share. However, when there is a fifth Sunday in the month, the meeting is a topic meeting. This week is a step 6 share, and Radcliffe's very kindly come along to share about step 6 for about 20 minutes or however long you feel comfortable. And step 6 is, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And with that, to you.
Thanks very much. My name is Radcliffe. I'm an addict.
Hi, Radcliffe.
And as this step suggests, I have a lot of defects of character. Unfortunately, all of which I've brought with me today, and all of which you are going to help me to understand and move away from on a daily basis. That's my understanding of this, of the process that we are engaged in, and that I feel part of eventually. If I have recognised that I have defects of character, how did that come about? I mean, obviously, I'm Radcliffe. I'm a perfect alpha male. Hi. I can work a room like the best of them. Hi. Ego suppression. That's one of the great things about anonymity, about our fellowship. It's about being part of something that's greater than me and that I'm as important a part of as I choose to make myself. That all sounds a bit airy-fairy, but it's amazing when you listen to readings and you are doing the formal opening of the steps. I'm a rebel. I was born a rebel. If you tell me something, I want to challenge it. I don't know why that is particularly, but I want to challenge it. You tell me, hang on a minute, my opinion counts. My opinion matters. All right? Just say, I just want to get the landscape right for this morning. But when I first used to come to meetings, which was a long time ago, and there's this bit, and we still say it, and I just think it's amazing. Anyone with any drugs or paraphernalia, can you please take them outside, leave them there, and bring yourself back in? This is for the protection of the group. Well, I still maintain that if you can do that, you don't need to be here. It was not possible for this addict to do that. I could not be separated from the one area of comfort that I thought I found in life. And in real terms, the using phase of my addiction was actually ultimately unsuccessful, but ultimately a quite legitimately intelligent reaction to cope with being me in the world. I believe that. And oh boy, did that belief lead me down a blind alley, several blind alleys. The potted notes of my recovery story are, like pretty much everybody else's, quite a lot of false starts. I got to a point in my life where I became open to the concept that something had to change, and that the only thing that was going to change in the world was me. And that was after, I've had body parts removed. Half my lungs were removed. I used to. That certain cocaine derivative which worked very well on a mesh pipe. Not so well once the mesh was lodged in your lungs, 500 degrees, I might add. Did that stop? I mean, it stopped my gallop for a while. Obviously, there was various surgical procedures that needed to be got through and physical rebuild. Did it stop me? No, it didn't. No, it did not. Did entrance into, and I'm not proud of this, 21 different treatment facilities. Actually, that's not quite true. 21 times, some of them were the same one several times. 4 jail terms, 2 marriages, 3 abandoned children. Those were the sort of highlights, the circumstances of my life, through which I still maintain the belief that using drugs was a viable operative procedure for me. Hello. So I had a real problem facing reality. I really struggled with the notion that you guys weren't all a bunch of muppets and tragic and sad, and that I would find the way. And that ego, that arrogance that I brought to every encounter, the dishonesty that this self-seeking, self-serving person who would, hi, work a room like a good... I'd chat you up in a nightclub while rummaging through your handbag. You know, I supported a drug habit for months, just around the corner from here. I redefined meat trading in London by my failure to pay for the goods I left Sainsbury's with on a regular 2 or 3 times a day. And because I was this tall, cocky, hello, obviously outrageously sort of knobby English git, most security guards faced with it, I say, could you tell me where the car park is? Well, I had bagfuls of legs of lamb and chicken wings. It was amazing. Now, all these, and I'm obviously, from the outside, I was this guy. I presented this guy, certainly in the early days. This, obviously, I like to think of myself as tall, good-looking alpha male. Hi. It's all crap because inside I was a sort of rather inadequate vortex of self-pity, masquerading as an amoeba. That's who I really was, but I couldn't own that. So I had to. There's one of the sayings there about, what does it say there about something of knowing ourselves?
Fully considered. If you can't read this, you need glasses.
That'll be the one. I had to recognise who I was, and that came through the process of the steps prior to step 6. And I think it's important to put step 6 in context for me. And in its purest empiric formula, the steps are fantastic. Step 1. I think if you go to a meeting, off your face, whatever, freaked out, on the run, thrown out, broken, overdosed, whatever it was that got you to that first meeting, I can't cope, I can't handle this, it's bigger than me, I'm being beaten. That's your step 1. If you at that meeting say to someone, and see these people, and someone says, yeah, you can come to another meeting, there's another one down the road tonight, another one tomorrow, meet me there. You're recognising that there is a power greater than yourself, and you're reaching out to it. And if you actually turn up at that meeting, then you have made a decision in that day, for that day, to go with that higher collective than the isolation of self. And that's what I did. And actually the first meeting I got back to, clean, I'd had a fair period, I'd had 3.5 years or something of recovery. Well, I say recovery, I had 3.5 years of abstinence, let's qualify that right, in which time I'd got remarried to a really foxy blonde who was obviously going to fix all my problems. And I had a fantastic horizontal relationship with her and no conversation whatsoever. But by the time I worked out we had absolutely nothing to say to each other, I was married to her. Bless her. Pumped up on a heady cocktail of Syroxat and Chardonnay. But I didn't know that at the time, so I hadn't bothered to inquire. And at the point at which I realised I was miserable and I felt trapped within this arranged marriage, effectively. I know what it is to be a victim of an arranged marriage. Probably I arranged it, of course. I had a row and I was sleeping in splendid, prideful isolation in the spare room, as the right of an alpha male, and I had to bang on the bedroom door. Excuse me, splitting headache. Had to go into the bathroom, en suite, of course. Grandiosity was always one of mine, and there were no paracetamol. There was some Nurofen Plus. I was 3.5 years clean. I took 2 Nurofen Plus. 20 minutes later, hello, baby. Oh, I remember that. That's fine. I was a hardcore junkie. I, worked the street. I've worked the big powders. A couple of Nurofen Plus. A couple of weeks later, I opened up my briefcase. There were sort of 10 boxes of these things. I am chomping them down like Smarties. Within 4 months of those first 2 Nurofen Plus, I was back in prison for having burgled my best friend's house. Using for me is always destructive. Using for me always brings out the very worst that I have to offer the world. And most of that is based around a self-seeking desire to feed the beast, which can never be full enough. And so when I came to these rooms, again, hello, I was convinced after all this experience of start, stop, failure, failure. 1, I couldn't do it. 2, I was unreachable. And 3, I was so full of self-hatred that it was a relief to focus on being selfish or lustful. Because any of the defects that stopped me having to really sit and accept who I was a blessing to me in that state. And the first meeting I got back to clean was an amazing experience. And actually the guy doing the chair is sitting here today. And he said something which I have never forgotten. I had probably listened to it many times before, but I had never heard it. It was a really important lesson for me in how I need other people's experience in my life. And this guy sat there and he said, my decision is in my feet, not in my head. And what I took from that was that it's what I'm prepared to do that will qualify the strength or the quality of my recovery, not what I think. Because what I think really isn't suitable for a church hall on a Sunday morning, and my thinking is pretty dark, you know. And the beauty that the rooms and the space that I was given to share my inner Tourette's at the drop of a hat, and the crap that I used to chunter out, you know. And I'm with apologies to the ladies, but you know, as a guy in early recovery, with all your feelings coming back, you know, I either had a lump in my trousers or a lump in my throat, basically. And I apologise for this, but my desire was to make the lump in my trousers a lump in somebody else's throat, obviously. And to which end I worked very hard in the pursuit of that particular defect, and caused quite a lot of mayhem and damage. And it's a measure of quite how good the schmooze effect was, because I had come out of jail. And because of the way I speak and my attitudes, I'd got my teeth kicked in, which fair. You know. Most of my teeth were on the yard at once. So, you know, trying to chat up a girl who's sexy when you're eating soup through a straw, not an easy one. Okay, to be fair, I had some quality control issues as well, but my sponsor pointed all this out to me. And the reason that my sponsor became so important to me was the first time I'd felt understood. To me, that was important. Because I felt very lonely through my using, because my pride wouldn't let you share that I felt inadequate. And I never forget, it was a newcomers meeting over in West London, and I was this broken man really who'd got a borrowed pair of trousers, you know, nice pair of shoes, and suddenly the outside was starting to look just a little bit high again. And I would walk into that meeting, you know, days clean. Hi, hey, yeah, good. You know, working the room like some kind of B-bit actor from Hollywood, you know, slightly off Broadway and a bit off key. That's how I saw it. And I went up to this guy and I graced him with my presence for a moment. And I said, I invited him to sponsor me. And he looked at me and he went, no. Why? You're fine. I learned a really powerful lesson. What I present to the world is not who I am. And in order to know who I am, I have to present what's really going on, not what I think will get me through, take just enough of a corner off to get me there quickest. So, having established step one, the hard yards in my life, you know, I was 40 to 43 years old, and with all this attendant baggage and wreckage, you know, fully aware that my addiction had been paid for basically by the people that I loved, I was left with the unescapable conclusion that without working a 12-step program, I was going to use again, because that's what I'd always done. I had 20 years of track record that told me and told you, and a couple of ex-wives who were never short of being able to tell me what my defects were, as it were. So I had a huge vested interest in becoming willing to change. But I didn't know what I had to change. And I think the whole essence of Step 6 is about the combination of willingness, humility and action, for me anyway, this is my interpretation, and that came through the revelations of the step 4 and 5 process, which I found very painful. There were some rewards. I discovered assets that I didn't dare share because I thought they made me weak. I thought to be kind, it's quite difficult to be kind and giving when you're, running a £100 a day crack and smack habit, living in a skip behind Dean Street. I mean, one doesn't expect to be a giving person, And I was the sort of addict that could share everyone's drugs except my own. I had to learn who I really was, and who I really was appalled me. And in terms of what my rock bottom spiritually was the recognition that my behaviour had deteriorated faster than I could lower my standards. And think about that. What I did appalled even me, and I was relatively unshockable. So the process of step 6, and it's a process for me, it's not an exam. I don't believe any of the steps are an exam. I don't believe any of them are a tick box GCSE on to the next. I don't see them like that. I used to. I used to think, and I've been presented with the steps in well, they call them treatment facilities. I call them containment facilities, because I would be contained, and I could get abstinent. I could get drug free. You could put me in a room. You could put me in jail. You could put me in treatment. I could stop using. That's what fed my denial that I was in control, that I could do it, because every now and then I would stop. And it took so much evidence to the contrary, But I used to have that thing. I'd be great at advice. Went round at the man's. Remember the good old days before mobile phones, when you knew your dealer would be in, because if he wasn't, you couldn't get served. That was when I started using. So it was great. So I would spend hours on the sofa of some squat. Curtains closed, bit of a candle, bit of Pink Floyd, heaven. That was me. And telling people how they should live their lives. And clueless. I was clueless. And through the process of step 4 and 5, I revealed who I was, not just to God, because God's easy if you're an addict. If you're an addict like me, you think you are God. That was the first learning curve. Actually, I wasn't. And that came about with a really chance remark from my sponsor, who was so fed up with my bullshit and justifying why I was behaving so unpleasantly in early recovery. And in a rare moment of humility, I said to him, I don't really know how to change. I was scared. I was scared that I'd lose who I thought I was. I'd lose where I felt safe. And he said something really clever, and he just sort of said, Radcliffe, don't you think it's time you found a power marginally greater than yourself? He recognised that he was dealing with an ego so overblown because and he'd bless him, taken a view to work with that, and he realised he wasn't going to pop the bubble, but he could deflate it. And actually, the concept of deflating the great I am is lifelong work, and it goes up and down. It's not done. It's a process. That came from the recognition of who I really was when I was faced with my step 4. And the really beautiful thing about this fellowship and about our program is that the requirement in step 5 to share it with another human being meant that I couldn't filter my message to God. And my relationship with God had been very much on the pay-as-you-go kind of thing. I would send a text every now and then resent not getting a reply. But with another human being, I got another perspective on what I really thought and what fueled me. And I found a huge sense of relief. It's the first time, even having been around a couple of years, that I really understood what it was to be not alone, to be not on my own, to not have to carry the load. That was my first understanding when I shared step 5 with another human being. And of course, my willingness in the 2 or 3 hours subsequent to that, take me, I am yours, of course, life goes on. There wasn't an epiphany moment. I would have, in that time, had Gabriel come, it would have had to have been Gabriel, for me, obviously, if he'd come down a golden ladder at that point and just said, I will take everything away, I would have given it. I would have given it. But do you know what? I didn't have to. All I had to do was make myself open to that possibility. All I had to do was prepare myself to be willing to do that. That's my understanding of step 6. It actually requires me only to be willing to change. Once I've understood what the changes are that can be effective, and I'm in an ongoing situation where I report in with my friends, with my sponsor, I have a girlfriend, and that is guaranteed to tap into my jealousies and my pride and my self-seeking, and my dishonesty. My God, some of the outfits she wears are sensational. And some of them are quite interesting. But I will find myself waxing lyrical about the interesting ones if I think I'm on for a promise, if I think it's going to get me what I want, which is horizontal. I have to own a lot of that, what I call low-level dishonesties in my life, which I justify to myself to schmooze my way through life to feed the great I am. And actually being honest with people I care about and really just putting me on the table is something I do more, but I don't do it as much as I could. So the step 6 process that I'm in is trying to understand where my defects tap into or trigger the dishonesty, the pride, the self-pity. That's a big one for me, which I was really ashamed about. Me, sorry for myself, please. I am a vortex of self-pity. It's all about me and it's not fair. Bollocks, it's not fair. Reward without effort, which is what using ultimately is psychologically. Reward without effort led me to despair. So my focus on step 6 is to work on what effort I have to make. To recognise defects, that requires me to be honest and open with my friends and my peers. And then to take that quiet time with me and my higher power. To really understand which bits are bits that I have any idea to ameliorate. I don't think you can change things, but I think you have to accept who you are and work on. So, and I want to work on my greed, so that I don't fight my boss because I don't think it's unfair that he doesn't pay me enough the whole time. I can't change him and I can't change the circumstances, but I can change the way I react and think about them. And that's part of my step 6 process. It's an ongoing, fabulous opportunity to practice the principles that I've learned and was given. And the reason I keep doing that, well, 2 of the reasons I keep doing that are probably still lounging about my sitting room, teenage bliss, my children, because you guys and people just like you in rooms just like this did so much more than stop me using. You gave me my integrity. You gave me my dignity, my self-respect. You gave my kids back their dad. You can't buy that. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Radcliffe. Thank you, Radcliffe. That was lovely to listen to you. The meeting is now open for raised hand sharing, and Jason will be our picker this week. Please share your experience on the step. Please be mindful of your sharing time. There is no limit. However, when you reach 5 minutes, I'll just show you this. If you can acknowledge that you've seen it, that would be great. And the last 10 minutes is reserved for newcomers, and with that, the meeting's yours.